Now that Adrian Kempe has been locked up, who's the next player the Kings need to sign? And what does the Kings roster look like going forward, both short term and long term? That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly recap of the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, the Kings are off until Thursday. They'll face the Sharks in San Jose to close out what to this point has been a very good road trip, 4 wins in 5 games. And we have a couple of days to discuss what's going on with the LA Kings. And with the signing of Adrian Kempe, it got me thinking about the future of the Kings, what we might know about how the roster will be constructed, who will be a part of it, what holes the Kings will need to fill. And no doubt this will be revisited after the season is over, but also nothing wrong with looking ahead as things stands right now. So we know Adrian Kempe is going to be part of the team's long-term plans. The talented winger is now under contract for 8 years, with that contract kicking in after this season. There's no way that the Kings could have afforded to let both Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar walk after this season, so it was a move that had to be made. By the way, I did mention in our last show that I didn't have the details on what kind of clauses were in the contract in terms of no trade, no movement, that kind of thing. According to puckpd.com, Adrian Kempe has a full no movement clause for the first 4 years of the contract, so he cannot go anywhere unless he gives his permission. And then after that, for the final 4 years, he has a list of 15 teams that he cannot be traded to without his approval. All right, so we know the Kings have a top-line winger going forward in Adrian Kempe. So who will Kempe be playing with next season is a pretty big question mark if we're operating under the assumption that the Byfield line, Quinton Byfield, Kevin Fiala, Alex Laferriere, is a line that will stay together. We don't know that, but it's possible. Either way, of the top 6 forwards, I think we're sure about 3 of them, Kempe, Byfield, and Fiala. Probably Laferriere, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Quinton Byfield's 23 years old. He is one of the young building block players the Kings are going to build this team around. He's going to be a part of the foundation. He's going to be a first or second line center in the immediate future and long term. Now, he is under contract for the next 3 years after this season. He's making $6.25 million per season. He does not have a no trade clause for the next 2 years, but he does have a limited no trade clause that kicks in the final year of his deal. He'll have a list of 10 teams that he cannot be traded to, but Quinton Byfield is not going anywhere. He is, again, one of the building blocks of the LA Kings now and for many years to come. Kevin Fiala likely will be part of the Kings' plans for the immediate future. He's 29 years old. He's a top 6 winger. He's under contract for the next 3 years after this season. He does have a modified no-trade clause with a list of 10 teams that he cannot be traded to without his approval, and he's making $7.875 million per season. There is the potential for the Kings to need to fill 3 of their top 6 forward positions. But for now, like I said, let's assume that Alex Laferriere is part of the top 6. So that would mean that they have 4 of their top 6 forwards that are pretty much set. Laferriere's 24. He has built himself into a very reliable winger. I do think it's interesting the Kings have not so subtly toyed around with him playing center. I could see him as a replacement for Philip Deneau down the road and be the Kings' third line center. But that's something that could happen. I think for the next couple of years, which he is under contract for, he probably is going to be playing on the wing. He's making $4.1 million. He has no kind of trade protection, but I do think it's possible. Maybe he could be the Kings' third line center down the road. Andrei Kuzmenko is the big question mark at this point. I have said I do believe the Kings will need to put him back in the lineup at some point and give him an opportunity to reclaim a spot in the top six. We'll see what he does with that opportunity. That said, he will be an unrestricted free agent after this season, and I'd say his future with the team at this point looks pretty uncertain. I think the Kings might have to prepare to, like I said, fill two forward positions, Andrei Kopitar and Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, the hardest to replace will be Kopitar. With all due respect to Alex Laferriere, while he may have a future playing center, I don't think it's in a top six role. I don't see the Kings giving him an opportunity to fill Andrei Kopitar's skates. If they're going to find a replacement for Kopitar, it clearly is from outside the organization. The problem is that top six centers are very difficult to find. We know the Kings' history in terms of signing free agents as it is, and the potential list of free agent centers available after the season is pretty small. As a matter of fact, I think there's only one real option I could see the Kings going after in terms of a UFA center that could be available and is not someone who's over the hill, like, with all due respect, Evgeny Malkin. I know he's having a great year, and Malkin's probably not going to sign with anybody else other than Pittsburgh. But anyway, the name that's out there to me is Nick Schmaltz of the Utah Mammoth. He's 29. He's currently playing wing on the top line for Utah, but he can play center. He's in the final year of a 7-year deal. It's paying him $5.85 million. Contract talks with him and the Mammoth over the summer broke down. Possible he could be traded at the deadline, although Utah looks at the moment to be a team that could be flirting with a playoff spot, and they would certainly not want to trade a key player in that situation. He's played great so far this year. He's got 10 goals and 22 points. He might be available for the Kings in the offseason if he doesn't re-sign with Utah, but he's also going to be very much in demand by every other NHL team out there looking for a top six center as well. If the Kings are looking for a winger, if Andrei Kuzmenko doesn't do anything and they're going to move on from him, which is I think is very possible, I think a name to keep in mind is a name we've talked about on this show before, and that's Buffalo's Alex Tuch. He's a UFA at the end of the season. The Sabres are having another tough year, and I'm sure they'd be looking to move pieces like Alex Tuch at some point this year. And who knows, maybe the Kings would go out and try and get him for this season and beyond. As for the rest of the Kings forwards that are under contract for next year, you've got Alex Turcotte. He looks to probably be in the Kings' future plans. He's 24. I think his ceiling is probably third line center, but we'll see. He is under contract for next season. He's making $775,000 per season. Sammy Holenius, going to be a restricted free agent after this season. I would expect the Kings to sign him to some kind of a deal, keep him in the organization. Then you've got 29-year-old Warren Foegele. He is signed for next season at $3.5 million per year. You've got 30-year-old Trevor Moore signed for the next 2 years at $4.2 million per season. Foegele has a limited no-trade clause. He's got a list of 5 teams that he can't be traded to without his approval. 32-year-old Joel Armia is under contract. By the way, Trevor Moore has no trade protection at all. 32-year-old Joel Armia under contract for next season. He's making $2.5 million. He has no trade protection. 32-year-old Philip Deneau is under contract for one more season after this year at $5.5 million per year. He has a 10-team no-trade list. So as for the remaining forwards currently on the Kings roster, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Jeff Malott. He's a UFA after this season, but certainly not someone who's probably in the plans for the Kings necessarily. Corey Perry's a UFA after this season. He's 40 years old already. He has said that, they're going to have to cut the skates off him. So if he plays well, which he certainly has so far, maybe the Kings look to bring him back for another year. We'll see. And as far as players in the system at the forward position for the Kings, Liam Greentree is projected to be, I think, a second or third line winger at the NHL level, but I think he's still likely a couple of years away. He's really the only forward that projects to be an NHL player as it stands right now. Now, maybe a Kenny Connors or a Jared Wright or a Cohen Ziemer, maybe they turn into the next Alex Laferriere, guys who we didn't really see being NHL players who blossom and become that. All right, up next, we're going to look at the Kings defense, which includes what I believe is their priority now that Adrian Kempe has been signed. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bet into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps everything more exciting, especially when your team is making that late run. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, with Adrian Kempe signed long-term, again, we're looking at players who may or may not be a part of the Kings' future plans, both short-term and long-term. We looked at the forwards. Now let's look at the defense and the goaltending. And the next big signing for the Kings, in my opinion, will be 22-year-old defenseman Brandt Clarke. He's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of this season. So he and the Kings will obviously have to agree on a new deal, but Clarke will be playing for the LA Kings next season and beyond. I know there are these trade rumors that seem to circulate around him. I don't get it. I absolutely see Brandt Clarke as a part of the LA Kings' long-term future, and along with Quentin Byfield, one of the building block players for the team going forward. As far as the Kings' defense going forward, I think certainly Mikey Anderson is an LA Kings defenseman that is clearly part of the long-term plan. He's a young 26. He's under contract for the next 4 seasons, making $4.125 million per year. He doesn't have any trade protection for next season, but he does have a 10-team no-trade list that he will have to submit to the Kings for the rest of his contract after next season. For everyone else on the Kings defense, they're all under contract through next season. Some are beyond. You got 35-year-old Drew Doughty. He'll be in the final year of his contract that pays him $11 million per season. Drew has a 7-team no-trade list. I would anticipate that after next season, that Drew will do much like Andrei Kopitar did for his final contract, obviously take more of a team-friendly deal that is short-term. You got 34-year-old Brian Dumoulin under contract for the next 2 seasons after this one, making $4 million per season. He's got a 10-team no-trade list. 31-year-old Cody Cece's under contract for the next 3 seasons at $4.5 million per season. He has a 10-team no-trade list. And 32-year-old Joel Edmondson is under contract for 2 more years after this season at $3.85 million. And he also has a 10-team no-trade list. So all those guys are going to be back next year. So it is very likely our defensive core will be exactly the same as it is this season. The only player from the Kings defensively that's a UFA is 27-year-old Jacob Overara. And if I was him and I saw all those guys are in front of me and the only way I'm going to play is if somebody gets hurt, I'm going to go try it somewhere else. Now, granted, he's not any kind of a star player. I do think he could find a home with a team on their third pairing somewhere, but it seems pretty likely, again, he ain't playing here unless somebody gets hurt. I don't see him. He's not going to beat out Cody Cece or Brian Dumoulin, these guys that are getting paid millions and millions of dollars. And for them to be like the extra defenseman. So unfortunately for Jacob Overara, who by all accounts is very well liked and is a great, great team player. And maybe if he just loves playing with the Kings and he's willing to accept that role of I'm the first guy to fill in if somebody gets hurt, then maybe he stays. But if I were him, I'd try and find a place where I could actually play because it's again, it's not going to be in LA unless there's injuries, which is a possibility. Now, the Kings do have some defensive prospects in their system, but I think it is likely they are all several years away, which I guess is convenient because, again, there's no place for them to play anytime soon. But we're talking about Henry Brustevich, Jared Woolley, Angus Booth, Kirill Kirsanov, and Jakub Dvorak. All possibilities down the road, but that's down the road. As for the Kings goalies, you've got 35-year-old Darcy Kemper and 32-year-old Anton Forsberg, and they are both under contract through next season. So those 2 guys will be back as our goalies most likely next year. Kemper's making $5.25 million per season. He's got a 10-team no-trade list. And the way things are going, I think you want Darcy Kemper likely back again. As for Anton Forsberg, $2.25 million. He doesn't have any trade protection, so you could theoretically move him if somebody wanted him. We'll see. We've got news on Eric Portillo coming up, and it's not good news, unfortunately. But he, if he's healthy, which unfortunately he isn't right now, then Eric Portillo is an option. The Kings do have two bright young goalie prospects. Future looks to be set in net a couple years down the road in Carter George and Hampton Slukinski. George is under contract. Slukinski is not as of yet. So that's the defense. That's the goaltenders, and we talked about the forwards already. What about the Kings coaching staff and front office? Jim Hiller's under contract through next season, and there is an option for a fourth year. Ken Holland, as general manager, from what we know, he agreed to a multi-year deal, so it's obviously more than just this year. I don't think that it's anything more than 3 years. As for team president Luc Robitaille, who knows? A lot obviously is riding on what the Kings do if they make the playoffs, and then is there any kind of advancement? Is there any kind of success? Is there any kind of positive steps taken forward? If they lose again in the first round, we know Ken Holland's going to still be around as GM. It's likely Luc Robitaille will stay as team president, although at some point you certainly wonder, is there a possibility of a change there? Look, Luc is very well liked, and I will admit, I like Luc Robitaille. I like him as a person. Every time I've been around him, it's hard not to like him. He has a great personality. He's a really nice guy. He tells lots of funny stories. But he obviously is in charge of a hockey team that to this point has, if not underachieved, certainly not achieved what the organization itself and Luc himself has been telling us the goal is. And at some point, there does need to be a change. We saw Rob Blake fall on the sword. I thought that was very honorable of him to do that. I wonder at what point does Luc do that? Maybe it's never. Maybe he has to be forced out. Like I've said a lot of times, I don't have a problem with Kings ownership. I think that AEG is shown to be good owners of the Kings. They spend to the cap. They let their hockey people do what they feel is best. They're not, in the middle of everything. But then the flip side of that coin is how motivated are they to make change? And I think we've seen, as long as the Kings are competitive and as long as they're in the playoffs, they seem okay with that. So again, if the Kings do make the playoffs, and even if they don't advance out of the first round, it seems like the only pressure on the Kings is the pressure they put on themselves. It does not seem like it comes from ownership. Like I've said before, I think the only way that AEG starts to do something is if the wheels fall off this thing. If the Kings aren't making the playoffs, if they don't get that playoff revenue, and people stop showing up, that's probably the only time things are going to change. But we'll see. We'll see. As far as Jim Hiller goes, again, he's tied to the performance of this team. He's obviously going to be under a gigantic microscope if the Kings do make the playoffs to see that he doesn't repeat his mistakes that he made the previous year. So obviously there is a lot riding when you look at coaching staff, front office, there's a lot riding on what happens this postseason. So we shall see at the end of the year. So other than a couple of top six forwards, which certainly is important, a lot of the LA Kings that are on this year's team could very well be back on next year's team. All right, so speaking of the future, we need to get a rain report from our fan correspondent. As I mentioned, unfortunately, he's sharing some bad news about Eric Portillo. We'll fill you in on that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard it all before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast acting, doctor prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. So visit Rugiet.com. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL, and you will get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com, Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use the code LockedOnNHL so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Our friend Don from the San Fernando Valley has checked in to give us some details on what's going on with the LA Kings AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign. And, I try to keep you updated as much as I can on the Reign, try to give you the scores and a few notes here and there when I have time. But clearly, all my attention is focused on the LA Kings. I really don't have time to watch the Ontario Reign's games and give you, my thoughts on how they're doing. So Don, who does watch all the Ontario Reign games, has been nice enough to volunteer to give us his thoughts on all the games. And it's been about a week since we've been able to check in with him. So we do have 5 games to get updated on with the Ontario Reign. So we'll start on November 7th. The Reign lost to the San Diego Gulls on the road by a score of 6-4. And Don says the Reign had some very good offensive flow and puck movement, creating a number of quality chances. This flow allowed the Reign to score 4 goals on a very good AHL goalie, in my opinion. Unfortunately, the team played perhaps its worst defensive game of the year so far, with the back end left open and poorly defended again and again. San Diego was able to launch many high-tempo rushes and outnumbered attacks, resulting in their 6 goals. Martin Kromiak had his best pro game ever with 2 goals and 4 points. Kenny Connors, who scored his second goal of the season, and Kromiak were the only plus players for the Reign. They were both a +1. Phoenix Copley wasn't bad in goal. He battled hard, but was overwhelmed by the attacks allowed by the goals on the Reign's porous defense. November 8th, the Reign beat the San Diego Gulls in Ontario 4-3 in overtime. He says, once again, the offense flowed and puck movement was good enough for the Reign to score 4 goals on a good San Diego goalie. This time, the team's defense was way better. The overall quality of San Diego's scoring chances were way down compared to the previous night. Eric Portillo was in goal and was solid once again, stopping 29 of 32 shots. The line of Yamsen, Hughes, and Zimmer created a nice goal finished by Yamsen and are showing improved chemistry. Zimmer has several assists, but no goals yet. The overtime game winner was scored by Kyle Burrows, a marginal NHLer, but definitely a big fish down in the AHL. Burrows is still paired with Kirill Kirsanov, and they have the makings of a solid pair. On November 11th, the Reign beat the Calgary Wranglers on the road 5-1. He says, lots of good news against Calgary. The kids were roaring tonight. Almost every goal involved one or more of our promising young prospects. The Reign led the entire game. Defenseman Angus Booth, last season's best Kings prospect on the team, was back after sitting out several games. Booth was paired with Kyle Burrows for the most part. Booth had no points, and he had a couple of tough shifts early on, but played with energy and was effective most of the time. He finished a +2. Kenny Connors scored his 3rd regular season goal to open the scoring, plus added an assist on Jared Wright's shorthander in the 3rd period. His checking was excellent again. Connors now has 7 points and is a team-leading +10 in 13 games. Jared Wright also had a 2-point game. His chemistry with Connors continues to grow. Cohen Zimmer scored his first pro goal in the 3rd period as the line of Jack Hughes, Otto Yemsen, and Zimmer stays together and continues to develop and looks more effective every game. Akil Thomas had a nice setup and solo assist on Taylor Ward's 3rd period tally. Jared Wright, with a great two-way effort and effective physical play, was the game's number 1 star. Cohen Zimmer was selected as the game's number 3 star, and Phoenix Copley played a very solid game, stopping 28 of 29 shots. He was rewarded with the game's number 2 star. The Reign's top plus players are Kenny Connors +10, Jared Wright +8, and surprisingly, while hardly being noticeable, Jakub Dvorak at +7. November 12th, the Reign fall 3-2 to Calgary. 3 minutes into the game, Eric Portillo went down with some serious but unclear injury. it seemed like he may have gotten hurt by the puck more than the contact with another player. There were several players in front of Portillo when the injury apparently happened, but there seemed to be no actual clear impact with another player. The puck zipped in through a small opening between a couple of players, and Portillo may have not seen it. Portillo had to be helped off the ice and never returned. Kenny Connors and Jared Wright both continued their fine two-way play. Kirill Kirsanov and Angus Booth, both left shots, played together most of the game. They were solid. Phoenix Copley played well and probably couldn't be faulted for any of the 3 goals he allowed. Jakub Dvorak scored his second goal of the season and leads the team's D-men in plus-minus. And finally, November 15th, the Reign lose 4-3 at San Jose. There were many defensive breakdowns. Lots of guys were minuses for this game, including some who were more reliable, no plus players at all. Best players were Kenny Connors, Andre Lee, 2 goals, Jared Wright, Francesco Pinelli, and defenseman Angus Booth and Jakub Dvorak. Phoenix Copley did not play badly, in my opinion. He was just overwhelmed by the quality of some of the chances. Some general news and info regarding the Reign. Goalie Isaiah Seville has been called up from Greensville in the ECHL for the injured Eric Portillo. There's no word how long Portillo is going to be out or any specifics on what the injury actually is. So that's not good news there. He says after 15 AHL regular season games, the Kings' top scorers among Kings prospects, Keel Thomas leads the team 12 points, 15 games. Andre Lee, 11 points in 15 games. Kenny Connors, 9 points in 15 games. Atu Yemsen, 8 points in 15 games. Francesco Pinelli, 8 points in 15 games. Kenny Connors is a plus 11 in 15 games. Jared Wright is a plus 7. Jakub Dvorak, a plus 7 in 12 games. And he says the best Reign prospects, 22 years or younger, in my opinion, are number 1, Kenny Connors, number 2, Kirill Kirsanov, and number 3, Jared Wright. Friday, the Reign are at home against Bakersfield. Saturday, they're on the road in Bakersfield. So thank you so much to Don in the San Fernando Valley for all of that information. We really appreciate his hard work. And frankly, if I had not heard from him the injury news on Eric Portillo, I would not know about it. And I even did an internet search about it. There was nothing there. So it's unfortunate that we don't get more news out there, but we are thankful to Don for all of his hard work in keeping us updated, not just on the scores or the standings or maybe who the leading scorers are, but giving us some detail about what's going on with the Ontario Reign, and we appreciate him letting us all know the unfortunate news about Eric Portillo. So I'll try and keep my eye out for any updates on that. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On Kings every day, coming up on our next show, friend Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty is going to stop by, and we will talk to him about the Kings season so far, talk about the Adrian Kempe signing, and all kinds of other fun stuff. We will have our fan feedback show at the end of the week, but if you're like Don and you want to send me something in email that's important information, or you just have any questions, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section, and we'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.